Hi, I'm SharpFLA, and did you know that animation is hard? Welcome back to 15/15, our Sisyphean endeavor that will inevitably grind us to dust. If you don't know how this project works, me and my collaborator Genus get together every week to make a new short film. We animate everything beginning to end, Sunday to Sunday, until it's done. We've done more work in the past few weeks than either of us have done in the past few years, and it is felt. This was week 5, and stick around because it was a challenge. If you want to support this project, share the videos around to anyone you think might find them interesting, because God, make it worth it for us.
Okay, we're back. So we were doing superhero. We could do your favorite, we could do super speed.
I don't know, superhero goes wrong.
Last minute save. Like, oh, the building's on fire. Oh no, the building's on fire. Call in the helicopter. Hey! So we're gonna do the last 30 seconds of Ashes.
The last 30 seconds of the whole series?
What is the riddle me this racist Riddler?
I'm the Riddler, I'm not racist.
My brain is fried.
We could swap the protagonist. Instead of following the superhero, we follow someone who lives in the superhero's world, maybe like a normal criminal.
I think you're right. I think you're actually correct, Genus. That would be funny.
Usually with these projects, we end up cycling through a bunch of different ideas before we get to the final one. Most of the time, they're tangentially related in some way, especially with more constraining prompts like superhero, but sometimes you don't really know until the project's done. I think these parts are really interesting because they show how we go from a basic beginning nugget of an idea into a finalized, finished film. Let us know if you like these sections in the comments.
Are we trying to go more comedy?
Yeah, I want something funny this week. I'm not trying to be miserable.
He hands over the money to the superhero, and the superhero pockets it.
Could do like an origin story. Like, suddenly guy gets powers.
Runs so fast, reaches escape velocity, and launches himself into the sun.
That'd be kind of funny. We could do like a speedster. We can show them in just like a normal track suit, like a normalist track suit, to show that they are kind of new at this whole super speed thing.
Like, okay, he hears like a siren and tries to run towards it, but since he can't control it, runs into stuff.
Maybe there's like a bank robbery going on and he like passes the bank and he's trying to stop, but he can't.
Something that you should be aware of while you're writing your film is whether or not what you're writing down on paper feels like what you want your audience to feel like when they're watching it. If you're writing a comedy and your premise is getting a giggle out of you, that's probably a good sign. Same if you're writing a horror short and it's making you feel a bit unsettled. I think what helped us make funny, interesting films in 15/15 is that we were personally interested in those films and found them funny ourselves. That doesn't mean that everyone's going to resonate with everything that you like, but it's a better bet because there's more than likely somebody else like you who has a similar sense of humor. So run with it.
Maybe he like ends up over the water and he has to keep going faster to not fall down. But the moment he like gets to land again, he accidentally steps so hard that he shoots himself off into space.
Now that we have our story pretty much down, time to get into production. The most important thing for me at this stage on my end is get character models done as fast as possible. I try not to spend more than a day or two before giving Genus something that he can animate. I'm not going to say that this is my best work or that it was always the easiest process getting there.
Why is this happening? I don't know. But it's real fun.
But that's not what this project is about. It's done. That's what matters. Let's move on. Animation for this week was pretty straightforward, except for one thing that we kinda took from last week that made this film a heck of a lot easier. If you're a 3D animator, you might be familiar with the idea of animation layers. Basically, they let you separate your animation into different parts that you can play at the same time. The most common way that they're used is in walk cycles. Productions will give you a canned walk that you can copy-paste onto your character, modify as you need, and do additional animation over top of without having to do the entire walk from scratch. That's kind of what we did here. We had a base run cycle that we used for the character, and we modified it as we needed depending on the shot. If we needed the character to run faster, we'd play the walk back faster. Or if we needed to have them do something different with their upper body while their lower body was still running, we could do that because it was on a different layer. In Blender, they don't call it animation layers, they have action strips on their NLA editor, which is slightly different, but you can use them in kind of the same way depending on how you implement it. Long story short is, reduce, reuse, recycle. If you can reuse animation in some way, do it. It makes stuff look good because you don't have to spend a bunch of time on things that could be easy. Okay, I know what you guys are here for. Let's get into what went wrong. Making a film is hard in and of itself, but this week, the hard part was sets. I started my life off as a 2D artist that ended up learning CG so I didn't have to do backgrounds for my animations. Quickly did I learn it's a little bit more complicated and I can't just not draw a background. In 2D, individual backgrounds are pretty time consuming. If you want to make a new camera angle, you have to draw a new background for that shot. This sucks, but relatively speaking, each individual asset within the camera view is less expensive than if you were to do it in 3D, at least for most assets that go beyond just simple primitives. While it takes me a bit longer to make an asset in CG, I can reuse it in all kinds of different ways. It's not just restricted to the one camera angle that I made it in. That's the balance to try and strike, between the complexity that goes into making it and how many times you'll reuse it. This is why if you want to make making a CG film as easy as possible, stick in one place, have one set and flesh it out the best that you can. For this film, we had more or less 3 or 4 sets. I don't think we struck the best balance in production, but we found ways to make it work. The first way was downloadable assets. For most of the buildings, we used some city street assets by an artist called Artemis. It was really useful to be able to just take the buildings that they made and slap them around until they looked right. For the scenes where the character is running over the water, we used some Google Maps scan data. Granted, these aren't the highest quality models, but they can really be useful in a pinch when you need to fill out a background. I personally don't think they came out the best in this short, but you should look at Genus's Ashes Episode 0 for a better example. Either way, for big overheads or really far distance shots, they're pretty good. Just grab them, rotate them, scale them, whatever you can to make them look different in individual instances. And that's another thing, instance your geometry. There are 2 ways to duplicate things inside of Blender. There's the Shift-D way of duplicating, where it creates a unique copy of the mesh that you duplicate, and the Alt-D way of duplicating, which will create an instance copy. Effectively, what this does is it allows your GPU to reference the original copy of the mesh without having to create a new version of it. In simple terms, it lets you render more with less. Instead of having 2 copies of the same object, you have 1 copy of the object that is referenced twice in 2 different places. It's like a file shortcut. Wherever you can, use instances instead of straight up duplicates, because this will save on memory and make rendering go faster. But let's get back to us and how things were going. Honestly, this wasn't my favorite week, as you can probably tell. It was definitely a better middle ground than week 3, less difficult, but not as easy as week 4. As much as I think our performance here was kind of mid, I'll be honest, I like that we did it. This was one of the first weeks where I felt like Genus and I really got into a rhythm. We started to understand the core reason why we started doing 15 over 15 in the first place. We're doing this project to become so used to production that we don't think about it anymore. To get a system that works. And despite kind of middling performance, we did that. This was one of the first times we really felt like a team. If you ask me, I think this means better films in the future and a better time working on them. And an even better reason to subscribe. We'll keep making as long as you keep watching, so leave a comment if there's something I didn't cover in this retrospective that you wanted to hear about. Check out the film, that'd be nice. But most importantly, thanks for watching, and
next time on 15 over 15.
The horse is here.